The alarm ripped through the ship before I even understood what was happening. Red light flooded the ceremonial hall, and the floor shook so hard that my mop bucket tipped over and spilled soapy water across the marble tiles. I grabbed the wall to stay standing. Somewhere above me, a voice on the intercom shouted words I did not understand, but the fear in that voice needed no translation. My name is Daniel Price. I clean floors on a ship that does not belong to my planet. 6 months ago, humans were given permission to work on Valari trade vessels, and I signed up because the pay was good, and I needed to leave Earth for a while. I never thought I would end up in the middle of anything important. I empty trash, I polish glass. I do not fight. I do not lead. I clean. The shaking stopped, but the alarm kept screaming. Then I heard footsteps, fast and heavy, coming from the corridor behind me. A group of Valari guards ran past the hall entrance, their armor clattering, their weapons drawn. One of them looked at me for half a second, eyes wide with something I had never seen on a Valari face before. Pure fear. I should have run with them. Instead, I stood frozen, staring at the pedestal in the center of the hall. On top of it sat the hammer. Every worker on this ship knew about the hammer. It was called the Hammer of Velkar, and it had sat on that pedestal since before the ship was even finished being built. The Valari treated it like a sacred object. Guards stood beside it around the clock. Nobody touched it. Nobody dared. The story went that the hammer chose its owner, and that only a true protector, someone strong enough and pure enough, could lift it. Every Valari warrior who had ever tried had failed. The handle would not move, no matter how hard they pulled. I never cared about any of that. I just wiped the dust off the pedestal every morning and moved on with my shift. But right now, with the alarm still screaming and the guards gone, the hall was empty, except for me. And through the far windows, I saw something that made my chest go cold. A ship, dark and jagged, was pulling alongside ours. Not a trade vessel, not a diplomatic cruiser, a raider ship, the kind pirates use when they want to strip a vessel of everything valuable and leave nothing behind. I had heard stories about raider crews from other workers. Some ships they hit never sent a single message again. I heard the door behind me hiss open. A man burst into the hall, breathing hard, blood on his sleeve. He was Valari, tall, silver-skinned, wearing the uniform of ship security. He looked at me, and then at the hammer, and something in his eyes changed. His name was Doran. I knew him a little, since he sometimes nodded at me in the hallways. Doran grabbed my arm. His grip was tight, almost painful. "You have to leave," he said. "They are coming through the lower decks. They already took the engine room." I asked him why he was not running with the others. He looked at the hammer again. "Because someone has to guard this room, and because I am the last one standing here." Before I could answer, the far doors blew open, not with fire, but with a sudden burst of pressure that threw both of us backward. Smoke rolled into the hall. Shapes moved inside it, tall and armored, moving with a kind of confidence that told me they had done this many times before. Doran pushed himself up and stood between me and the smoke. He was shaking, but he did not step back. "Get behind the pedestal," he said, "now." I did not think. I just moved, because staying still felt more dangerous than moving. As I scrambled behind the stone base, my hand hit the hammer's handle by accident. I meant to pull my hand away. Instead, without meaning to, my fingers wrapped around the leather grip. It lifted. Not slowly, not with struggle. It came off the pedestal as easily as if I had picked up a broom. I stared at it in my hand, completely confused, while chaos exploded around me. The raiders stepped through the smoke, 4 of them, wearing dark suits with glowing visors, weapons raised. Doran stood his ground, but I could see his legs trembling. He was outnumbered, and he knew it. One of the raiders spoke through a voice modulator, cold and flat. "Hand over the relic, and we will let you live." Doran did not move. I do not know what came over me. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the shock of holding something that was never supposed to be lifted. But I stepped out from behind the pedestal, hammer in hand, and every single raider in that hall turned to look at me. For a moment nobody spoke. Then one of them laughed, a short, ugly sound. "That is a cleaner," he said. "Look at his uniform. He probably does not even know what he is holding." He might be right, I thought, but my legs did not agree with my brain, because I did not run. The lead raider stepped closer, boots echoing on the marble floor. "Put it down," he said. "This does not concern you." I looked at Doran. His eyes were locked on the hammer, and for the first time since he grabbed my arm, I saw something besides fear in his face. Hope. "I do not know how to fight," I said, my voice shaking. "I have never held a weapon before today." "Then you should not have picked that one up," the raider said, and he raised his weapon. Everything after that happened fast. Doran shouted my name and shoved me sideways just as a bright bolt of energy tore through the space where I had been standing. I stumbled, and the hammer swung with me, its heavy head catching the edge of a support column. The column cracked, and a shower of stone dust rained down between us and the raiders, buying us half a second. Half a second was enough. Doran grabbed a fallen guard's weapon from the floor and fired twice, forcing two of the raiders to duck behind a pillar. I backed up, dragging the hammer with me, my arms burning even though the weight felt strangely light in my grip, as if it wanted to be used. The hall was long and narrow, lined with pillars on both sides. I remembered cleaning this exact space 100 times, every crack in the floor, every uneven tile. That memory became the only thing keeping me alive in the next few seconds, because I knew exactly where the loose section of flooring was near the third pillar, the one maintenance had never properly fixed. I ran toward it, and the raiders followed, exactly as I hoped they would. The moment the lead raider's boot hit that loose tile, it shifted under his weight, throwing him off balance. I swung the hammer, not aiming to strike him, only trying to protect myself, and the wind from the swing alone sent him crashing into the pillar beside him. He dropped his weapon and did not get up right away. The others hesitated. That hesitation was everything. Doran used the pause to pull me through a side corridor, one that led toward the escape pods. My lungs burned, and my hands ached from gripping the hammer so tightly, but I did not let go. Behind us, the raiders regrouped and gave chase, their footsteps pounding through the corridor. Doran fired back twice to slow them down while we ran. Ahead of us, red emergency lights blinked over a row of pod doors. "We are almost there," Doran shouted. But as we reached the pods, another raider stepped out from a side hallway, blocking our path completely. He raised his weapon at Doran before either of us could react. I did not think. I swung the hammer again, this time with everything I had left in me. The raider ducked just in time, but the force of the swing slammed into the wall beside him, tearing a support beam loose and sending it crashing down between him and us. It did not hurt him, but it blocked his path long enough for Doran to shove me into the nearest pod. Doran turned back for one last second, staring at the corridor filling with smoke and shouting voices. "Go," he said. "I will hold them." I grabbed his arm and pulled him inside with me before he could argue, slamming my palm on the emergency release. The doors sealed shut just as something slammed against them from the outside. The pod launched with a violent jolt, throwing both of us against the walls. Through the small window, I watched the raider ship grow smaller, then vanish into the dark as our pod spun away from the battle. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely keep hold of the hammer resting across my lap. Doran leaned back against the wall, breathing heavily, staring at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "You lifted it," he finally said. "Nobody has ever lifted it." I looked down at the hammer, the leather handle worn smooth from centuries of belonging to someone else, someone who was never me. "I do not know why," I said. "I was not trying to be anything. I just wanted to survive." Doran shook his head slowly. Maybe that is exactly why it chose you. Outside the small window, the battle continued in silence. Flashes of light in the distance marking a fight I could no longer see clearly. I did not know if the rest of the crew had escaped. I did not know if the ship would survive the night. All I knew was that somehow, a janitor with shaking hands and no training had walked out of that hall carrying something no one else could carry. And for the first time since the alarms began, I let myself believe we might actually make it out alive.